Alright, hey friends, welcome to Classics in Kelly, your weekly dive into some of the ancient world's wackiest facts. I'm Marc Graves, and today we will be talking about body size and beauty standards in the ancient world. I recently read an article that inspired me to do this video. It's entitled Obesity, Corpulence, and Emaciation in Roman Art, and I just thought that was very catchy, some really striking, colorful words, written by Marc Graves. And I have to do a quick disclaimer at the beginning of videos like this and just say that I'm not talking about objectively what is right or wrong here. I'm not talking about our modern values and understanding and concepts and terms and all that. I'm just giving you a little peek into the ancient world, what they thought about these things, what they said about them, the terms and the ideas that they had. So just keep that in mind. And then also, this is a pretty complex topic. It's not very black and white. There are plenty of nuances and exceptions depending on certain circumstances. So just keep that in mind as well. And if you really want to dive deeper and get the full picture of this, definitely check out that article. So the Roman beauty standard, and for that matter, this pretty much applies to Greece as well, was balance, was symmetry, was being in the middle. This was a very important principle for them that we might go ahead and call the golden mean. And the golden mean is supposed to govern all aspects of your life. You don't want to be too rich or too poor. You don't want to be too famous or without any friends at all. You don't want to be too fat or too thin. You want to be right smack in the middle. And this was kind of self-serving for the Romans and the Greeks because they considered themselves to be in this perfect middle climate or location of the planet. If you go north, say, to Northern Europe, to Germany, to Scandinavia, it gets really, really cold, and the people who live up there have to be really husky, and they're very emotional. They're a little too brash, a little too courageous, and the opposite is true if you go south. If you go to Africa, then everybody there is too skinny, they're too self-indulgent, too lazy, and again, this is all according to what the Romans and the Greeks thought, but they thought that foreigners were inferior and that they were superior because they lived in this ideal middle location where they had the perfect climate and also the perfect bodies that were perfectly balanced right in the middle. So to speak very generally, the beauty standard for ancient Rome and Greece was to fit that perfect golden mean, that not being too fat or too thin, too old or too young. You want to fit those perfect proportions, but there are exceptions. For example, in a lot of religious iconography, fertility goddesses are often portrayed as very voluptuous. They're a bit exaggerated how big and how curvy they are. Maybe they have a bunch of extra sets of breasts. Then there's portrayals of Heracles where it's often exaggerated how much muscle he has. He's just so big and he has muscles all over the place, again, so that he can give you good luck, he can give your household protection. And then we have lots of portrayals of unusually large phalluses that are found all over the ancient world. For example, Herms are these statues with big phalluses on them that are supposed to just bring good luck and fertility to their community. So there are some examples of exaggerated, either being too muscular or too fat, that are seen as good things. And then on the other hand, of being too skinny, usually that's bad, but not always. So if you're a really intense philosopher, if you're a really good stoic, you have lots of self-control, you're really serious, or you're a great scholar, then you might get portrayed as being a little on the skinny side, as being a little too slender, as being a little bit gaunt, but that's not completely negative. There's some respect for you, that you have this self-control, this discipline, that you are a little bit distant from worldly pleasures, that you restrain yourself from them. So again, the standard usually is that golden mean, but not always. So now that we've kind of gotten that introductory stuff out of the way, let's take a look at some negative stereotypes and vocabulary that were associated with people that fell either into the too fat or the too thin category, starting with the too thin people, people that are just too darn skinny and need to eat a sandwich. So some negative stereotypes that were associated with that emaciation, as this article so nicely puts it, are that they are poor, they are disease-ridden, and or they are lower class. So if you're lower class, if you're poor, you can't get enough access to food and you would tend to be on the more slender side. And if you're sickly, if you're always struggling with disease, you may also have a problem with not being able to keep weight on you. You may be kind of gauntly, ghostly. So those are some negative stereotypes associated with that. some vocabulary that goes along with being skinny. Here's a few words: isknos, leptos, or phaulos. And most of these not just imply skinniness, but also in their connotation is the idea of being poor, feeble, lacking in substance or in status. So you can see these are kind of loaded terms that have some negative stereotypes, some negative connotations hidden in there. Then I want to share with you a quote from the Roman poet Ovid, and this comes from a little bit later in his life, where he has been banished from Rome. He's gotten in trouble with Augustus, and he's writing a letter to his wife where he is lamenting the fact that she's having to go through this hard time with him. Apparently she has lost some weight, I guess, from all the stress, and he's saying that he's sorry about all of that. So let's check out what he has to say. Oh, may the gods grant that I can see thee thus, lovingly kiss thy altered locks, and folding thy slender body in my arms say, love for me hath wasted thee so. So he's not mad at his wife that she's lost all this weight, but he definitely feels like it's a negative thing, that it's not healthy, and he feels bad that he has caused this or brought this on her. Then let's take a look at some stereotypes of people that are too fat or considered to be too fat. And these aren't too shocking. They're pretty similar to what you might think they are. That people who are fat don't have enough self-control, that they're lazy, that they're not capable of doing their jobs as well as everyone else, and finally that they are more likely to be infertile. So let's take a look at some quotes that demonstrate these stereotypes. So starting with Dio's account of the Emperor Vitellius, and it is about him being dragged through a mob right before he's about to be executed. Along the sacred way they dragged the emperor, who had often paraded past in his chair of state, and they conducted the Augustus to the forum, where he had often addressed the people. Some buffeted him, some plucked at his beard, all mocked him, all insulted him, making comments especially upon his riotous living, since he had a protuberant belly. And then Pliny the Elder, who writes about natural history in Latin, has some very unpleasant things to say about obesity in general, not just in humans, but in all animals. So he says, on this account, species in which the distance from the belly is longer are greedier for food. Moreover, those with a very fat abdomen are less clever. All fat animals are more liable to barrenness, in the case of both males and females. Also, excessively fat ones get old more quickly. All animals have some fat in the eyes. In all cases, the greasy fat has no sensation because it does not possess arteries or veins. And in most animals also, fatness of condition causes insensitiveness. And it is recorded that because of this, pigs have been gnawed by mice while still alive. It is also on record that the son of the consular Lucius Apronius had his fat removed by an operation and relieved his body of unmanageable weight. So there are several interesting tidbits in that passage. First, Pliny is not the only one to record these stories about pigs that get so fat that they can't move, they just lie around all the time, and then mice burrow into them while they're still alive and they can't feel it. So the mice just goes about living its life inside of a pig. It's super gross, and I have no idea if this is even possible in real life, but what a story. Then we have the account of some sort of primitive liposuction that apparently people were using in the ancient world. That is just wild to me. I definitely think of liposuction as being a modern thing. I don't know how they were doing it in the ancient world. We don't have any detailed accounts of somebody performing that operation, but that's really cool to see that it was a thing. And then finally, I should explain why he thinks that obesity leads to infertility. His reasoning behind this is that fat, semen, blood, menstrual fluid, these are all sort of the same substance, or at least they derive from the same substance. So if your body is taking food and turning it all into fat, it's not turning any of it into semen or into menstrual fluid in the case of women. And so if you don't have those, you are going to be infertile. So that's what his mental process is there. And there's just so much in that passage that gives you insight into their scientific understanding or beliefs about the world that I just really love and am fascinated by. But again, fatness wasn't always negative. We have words in Greek like pion or eutrophes that refer to being like stout or ample or fertile. So it can refer to like a stout person, or also just fertile earth or fertile ground or land. And there are plenty of statues of fat emperors, of fat empresses, of fat chubby cupids, and these are all supposed to show that you're well off, that you're well fed, that you're blessed, that you're powerful, etc. So those are all good things. And then to go on a little bit of a tangent, we also have statues of people that are portrayed as very old. They're gaunt, they have wrinkles, they're sort of glowering at you. And you could think that, well, that doesn't really fit the golden mean. The golden mean is you need to be right in the middle, like 25, 30, that's the perfect age. So why are there these statues of old people? And part of the reason for that is the Romans have a great respect for gravitas, for people who are old, who are wise, who are seasoned, who are serious. And so portraying somebody who has all those qualities, who has seen it all, who is old, could be a positive as well as a negative. So I hope from this video you understand that it's not very easy to say that the Romans always found X attractive or Y unattractive. It's kind of a complicated issue, but I hope you have a little bit more insight into that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for checking it out. And a special thank you, as always, to subscribers and to Patreon members. I hope to see all of you again next week. Karate.